the gauntlet was first thrown down and a challenge put in front of our guest today, a huge challenge, a huge task to potentially change the face, the culture, the education of a nation in soccer. That task was accepted by today's guest. We want to welcome, without further ado, a fantastic coach educator, and more than that, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sporting Denver, and thanks for joining us. We welcome Sam Snow. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Richard, or should I say Richie English?
A bit of both. Whatever you want to call me, Sam. Rich or Richie is fine by me. Once again, thanks very much for joining us. What are you up to currently, Sam? What's it look like right now?
Richie, it's good that it seems soccer is beginning to get back on track a little bit more here during the pandemic. Where I'm at in Central Texas, a good deal of play has resumed in training sessions and matches. Not completely yet, but it's definitely on course. And as a consequence, one of the things that I'm doing more of are coaching courses. That's really picked back up. I've done already 4 youth modules. I've got grassroots courses. I've got several more grassroots courses scheduled in South Texas, Austin area, that such. And, some D license and a C license course. And so all of that is getting more and more back on track. And I think we're getting more coaches involved because they too are excited about finally being able to get back out onto the field.
Through American Made, the consultancy programs, the coaching programs. Do you want to let our followers and all our listeners know about how that first began, which is currently happening, and just the inside look of what that looks like, Sam? American Made.
Yes, Richie, it's American Made Soccer Consultants is a company I started when I retired from USU Soccer, and certainly wasn't ready to just sit on the sidelines. So I'm still involved in trying to educate, promote, and grow the sport. So what American Made Soccer Consultants does is it takes myself and my partners along with our extensive professional network, people involved with professional expertise in a number of different areas, and puts that vast group of people in potential contact with clubs. So our main target that we're trying to work with are the existing 5,500 to 6,000 soccer clubs that are across the United States, in helping them to evaluate themselves, do their professional business better, do a better job of developing their internal staff, be they administrators or coaches, do better with their interaction with the parents of youth players, and then most importantly, and certainly doing a better job of player development and the things that we want to continue to do to improve the quality of the youth soccer experience. But also we're at a point where all of us want to seriously increase the quantity of people participating in the sport. So that's part of what I'm doing with American Made Soccer Consultants. And then I'm working with another group of partners in a newly formed organization called The Game Plan. And our initial focus is helping clubs as they emerge out of the COVID-19 pandemic timeout that we've had going on. And not only how do they handle specifically the return to play protocols from the pandemic, but that certainly has impacted their business. And it's impacted everything from revenue streams because of player registration to actual participation, working on participation. And that is varying, Richie, from location to location in the country. So that's a bit of what going on there. And then, if you don't mind, I'll one more thing that I'm currently working on with American Made Soccer Consultants is looking at how do I provide some education opportunities for coaches that's outside of the national coaching schools and the state coaching courses and the national convention, all of which are fabulous experiences and things that coaches should be doing. Then how do we supplement that? How do we complement those things? So one of the things that I'm doing is putting together a tour of coaches to go to Germany to take the C license through the DFB to begin down the pathway of UEFA courses, and frankly to experience a soccer-rich culture, a soccer-rich nation where you kind of are immersed in football, in soccer, in that country. So the course that we're doing, it's all in English. And
that'll help.
Yeah, it will help a lot because the foreign Americans that are fluent in German, they're out there, but not enough. So we do the course in English. We go to a Bundesliga match. We go visit youth clubs in the area, as well as taking the C license course.
Under the consultancy, the phrase, Sam, coach education, it always sounds a little bit limited to me, and the perception of people wanting to get into this at that grassroots and that foundation level. With the consultancy, just briefly touch on that internal side of it, from administration down, internally, right throughout there on the field, because it seems like the whole package to me, Sam.
Well, Richie, I think it is, and thank you for bringing that up, that it is indeed not just coach education. That certainly is my forte, along with player development at various ages and various levels of competition. But with our network, our group, we also are able to get an impact with administrators, for example. Also with referees, but as an example with administrators, it's the one piece that in soccer in the United States that we haven't addressed on a formal level, the way that we have addressed formally referee education and formally coach education.
Right.
We have obviously different grade levels of referees and courses that they can go through, and assigners and assessors in referee education and development. We have a number of different levels of coaching courses and licenses and diplomas that coaches can go through on a formal level through U.S. Soccer, through their state soccer association, through United Soccer Coaches, but we've not ever done that in a formal level, progressive fashion with soccer administrators. So that's one of the things that my agency, American Made Soccer Consultancy, is able to do and is doing at a club level. And then also with referees, while there's formal education going on for them, there's not always for that grassroots referee, that local referee that may not aspire to go to the higher grade level courses in referees. They need some local mentoring, some ongoing support in education. So one of my partners is a FIFA level referee instructor and is able to support us and support that particular effort. And then through our network, we can tap into sports nutritionists, sports medicine, governance within the sport, sport marketing and business, being able to do very scientific-based surveys to help clubs really assess themselves. And that's a big piece that I think most of the clubs have not really done. They may have done it in a cursory fashion, but not in a more scientifically based fashion.
It sounds to me, like a total holistic approach, because I've always found there's been a bit of a disconnect from, the internal side, the administrators leading out onto the field. And this seems to draw it together. Touching on that, Would that involve in certain camps and clinics alongside the coach education with that the players being active out there with the players as well, Sam?
Well, it certainly could. I mean, when we go in and work with a club, we typically will start that conversation with the leaders of the club. So that's going to be the board of directors. The initial survey is probably going to be with the board of directors, perhaps also include any employees that the club has. So administrator or technical employees that the club has. Assuming that the club then wants to continue to do business with us, we're going to expand that survey to more of the club stakeholders. So that's going to include volunteers within the club, volunteer administrators, volunteer coaches. It's going to begin to involve some of the players. It's going to involve some of the parents of some of the players. It might involve some businesses, sponsors that the club might have. So we want to begin to get exactly, as you said, Richie, that 360-degree review of the club and get for the club a better perspective from all of the stakeholders that they have directly and indirectly are engaging with, and how does that club interact with the community? And that community starts with the internal community of the club itself, and then the greater community of the town and the city in which that club exists.
I think you have the ability for a bespoke program for whichever club, or almost tailor-made is what it sounds like to me, Sam, for the individual club, the individual organisation, making that contact with them, their needs. Am I right in saying that? So it's all adjustable, it's progressive, and as I say, bespoke.
It is, Richie, and you've said it very well. Certainly, there's a lot of common ground from soccer club to soccer club all across the United States, have a lot of similar strengths and weaknesses and challenges that they have to deal with. But we certainly take our survey, tailor it to the specific club and needs of the club. A club in Central Florida compared to a club in Colorado are going to have some different challenges, but they're going to have a lot of the things that are going to be the same. They're all dealing with how do we do a better job of player development? How do we do a better job of communicating to the parents of the players? How do we do a better job of developing our internal staff, be they administrators or coaches? How do we do a better job of managing our budget? So a number of different common grounds, but a lot of things too that have to be tailored to the circumstances of that club.
I think even more so, Sam, now with you just said circumstances, we're still in the circumstances, what started, last March. We're running through that. So I'm feeling there's more of a need now for not a total restructure of running organisations, but a need for those clubs that have maybe just beginning their process. I found a few clubs start new here right now. So in general, it's a wide spectrum of new clubs, having a look at the present clubs and restructuring and getting involved that way with American-made and US soccer consultants. There's a need widespread there right now.
Yes, and this is a great time, actually, Richie, for clubs to do this process. Resuming play until this coming spring. Some of them are on somewhat of an indefinite hold, depending officials are recommending. Some of them are back to participating right now, but perhaps not at 100% level compared to where they were last fall.
Right.
So this is actually a very good time for soccer clubs to be able to step back and assess their business, assess their club, do some self-reflection. And that goes better when you're able to work with an outside consultancy group that can bring in a scientific tool, can bring in years of professional experience within the sport, can bring in just that different set of eyes. When you try to, as a soccer club, to assess yourself, you have your automatic blinders on, that
Right.
your automatic self-perception that's going on, that an outside group doesn't have that prejudice, if you will, as you look at yourself.
Does the program does it involve hands-on with the parents as well, to educate the parents within the process of developing the club, evolving the club as well, Sam? That invitation to the parents to get involved.
Yes, absolutely, Richie. It depends upon certainly what the club is asking for, as to how we tailor the basic survey that we send out, and then tailor the action steps that we take based upon the data that we're able to collect, about the club, and where the club sees its greatest needs. There's probably not a youth soccer club in the country that doesn't recognize that it could do a better job of communicating with the parents. Gotcha. As one of the group of stakeholders within the club, and so that probably is pretty common. I've got to think among soccer clubs all across the U.S.
So, all this knowledge and experience in the production now of the programs and the vision, I'm going to backtrack with you, Sam. When you first came into coaching education, my friend, US Youth Soccer, you were approached and the gauntlet was thrown down. What did it look like at that point when you walked through that door and said, challenge accepted?
Richie, that was 2003 when I first started working for USU Soccer, now branding as USYS, and so the landscape was significantly different in one large factor at that point in time. US Soccer's coaching department was a little bit on the back burner as far as the priorities of the leadership of the federation was concerned. There wasn't a full-time DOC for the federation at that particular point in time. Okay. The state associations were feeling a need for more support and guidance from a national level, and that's where US Youth stepped in and actually created a coaching department a little bit before I was hired, and then decided to expand it after that and do more offerings, particularly for grassroots coaches and what we might refer to as recreational. And that was a lot of the focus initially, was to do a better job of educating coaches, administrators, and parents of players with the realities of pre-teen soccer. So much of the coaching education was very, very good, but it was focused on working with teenagers and working with players at a slightly higher level of competition. And not much of it was focused on how do we actually coach the true beginners at 6 years old, 8 years old, 10 years old, and the realities of coaching the youngest age groups. So that's where the focus was initially.
What was your first task? Obviously, the focus, that grassroots and that foundation. What was your first task to say, I've got to get these people buying into these, maybe parent coaches, etc.? What was your first task to get out there, to get them to come back and buy into that? Because obviously it wasn't out there for them before. What was your first task on that one to get them drawn into that?
It's at the outset here, it's not going to sound like there's a direct connection, but the first big task was getting regular meetings going on for the state association technical directors. The technical directors of the state soccer associations had some meetings at the coaches convention at that time known as the NSCAA. now United Soccer Coaches. But it was somewhat informal. It was self-led by the state coaches, and so we formalized that a little bit as a national organization, saying we are going to, as a coaching department at US Youth, we're going to get together all of the state association directors of coaching, technical directors, and start to do this on a formal, consistent basis, helping to get that group of people on the same page. And that was going on to an extent, Richie, with the federation. But since the federation at that particular point in time did not have a director of coaching, it wasn't as formalized as it needed to be. So that was one of the first things we did, and actually worked on putting together an operations manual for the state association technical directors to get all 55 state soccer associations onto the same job description as to what is the state coach, what is that job, what should that person be doing, and then going on down the path of educating that group of coaches, and beginning to work with that group of coaches first on their own development as a technical leader for an entire state, which is a big job.
Yeah, right.
And most of them came from either being a club coach, a club DOC, a former college coach, something along those lines. And they've worked with their state association, but now they're in charge of impact development of the sport across an entire state. Well, that's a big jump. So it was working with that group, and then getting those people even more professional than they already were, and getting them, all 55 of them, on the same page. That had a direct impact upon the grassroots coach, the beginner coach. Because now that group of state technical leaders were able to go out and deliver a common message and sing from the same, work from the same game plan.
Right. You've led from the front in the trenches and created that staff nationwide, as you say, with the director of coaching, the coach education format. So that staff has been created. You mentioned the word, Sam, convention. My question to you is, the symposiums that you've conducted over many, many years, how on earth did you manage to put those together, and what was your involvement in those wonderful symposiums and conventions that you've created?
Richie, it's involving two different levels. So there were symposia put on that would be perhaps done in a region, at a region level. So for those who don't know, U.S. Soccer and USU Soccer have the country divided into 4 regions: the East, the Midwest, the South, and the West. Formerly, those regions were known as 1, 2, 3, and 4. They changed titles to geographic titles. And so some of those symposia would be at a regional level. And so you would invite in people from all around that region to come into one location for a symposium. Certainly it was always open to people from anywhere, but you would typically get people from within that region. And those symposia sometimes would be kind of mainstream coaching education, if you will. And then some of them were specifically with have coaches work with disability athletes. So Top Soccer as a program. With AYSO, it's called VIP, very important player. So it's helping that coach education for coaches working with disability athletes. And then some of it was mainstream. And then there were the national workshops. So for a long time, USU Soccer had its own national workshop that was a standalone event. Several years ago, about 7 years ago, it merged with the United Soccer Coaches Convention, and it continues to be a merged event. USU Soccer's workshop is a part of the National Convention of United Soccer Coaches.
Right.
So that was a bit more broad in terms of we had some specific education tracks for administrators, some for coaches, and then there were meetings that had to be organized and conducted. On my part, for the coaches, the one meeting that I specifically did still goes on, and that's for those state association technical directors. So from those first meetings in 2003, those meetings have gone on annually now and continue and will continue. And then there were meetings for the ODP regional head coaches, the Olympic Development Program. And then it was putting together the coach education track of practical sessions, classroom sessions, and quite an involved process. So that's something you start working on about 10 months prior to the event.
Right. Yes, I've been involved in a couple here locally, and I just get to push the equipment around, So I mean, but it's a massive setup, and what you've done, Sam, just on behalf of Sport Endeavour, what you've done in your time educating coaches, parents, players, clubs is phenomenal in that period of time from your younger early days there.
I'm not laughing at what you're seeing. I'm laughing at the photo that just popped up.
I insisted that we pop that one up anyway, mate. So this whole package, which now leads into your experiences, your philosophies, into the American made now, which is nice and compact, but still at the same time, it is nationwide. Down those years, Sam, of coach education, has there anybody that has come along that has inspired you with your philosophies now and had an input into the way you've developed your coaching pathway?
Absolutely, Richie. I think all of us in our chosen profession, whatever it may be, have mentors, leaders, educators, teachers, that impacted us, influenced us, particularly when we're new in our chosen career. So for me in soccer coaching, my biggest mentor and biggest influence was Dr. Tom Fleck. As a matter of fact, there is an annual award that USU Soccer gives at its annual banquet at the convention, and it is for coach educators that have dedicated their careers and excelled in being an educator of fellow coaches. So that's named after Tom Fleck. And I had the great fortune when I was in Florida, working also with Florida Youth Soccer as an ODP coach and also as a coaching course instructor, to work a great deal with Tom Fleck. So he certainly had a big influence upon me in terms of my coaching philosophy, my skill set as a coach educator, guided me and taught me things there. One of the lines that I learned from Tom, whether it would be a coaching course, an ODP session, what have you, was always send them home having learned something. So I've tried to follow along with that, whether it be a meeting that I've led the meeting, to an ODP session, to a coaching course, always send them home having learned something. And I also had the good fortune to also have a good deal of interaction with Walt Chisowitz, who was among the initiators, founders, pioneers of not only soccer, but coach education, coaching schools in the United States. Walt Chisowitz, a lot of people might know the name from the little 4v4 tournament that goes on at the convention on Saturday night.
Sure.
They as the Walt Chisowitz tournament. Well, Walt was one of the people, along with Detmar Kramer and a couple of others, who actually founded the coaching schools in 1970 for U.S. Soccer. And so Walt was our national team coach. He was the head of our coaching schools for many, many years. And so I had the fortune of having a lot of contact and interaction with Walt. And then one other name that hopefully people will recognize, the name Bob Gansler.
Right.
I know that you do. Maybe some of the younger folks out there that are involved in
Everybody
soccer.
out there, Google it, get it going.
There you go. So I had the good fortune of also being influenced by Bob Gansler.
What would I like to change direction? Those names, everybody, by the way, get them. You can check it online anyway. Get those names and the influencers that create that pathway for many years to come. And you mentioned the word visionary. That's what you are as well, Sam. So, and you are a pioneer of that next level and continuing to do so. Now, if I change in direction, what advice would you give to that foundation coach, that grassroots coach coming in now to say, normally my kid's playing, so I'm going to get involved, or however it does transpire? What advice would you give to those parent future soccer coaches, Sam?
In a single word, patience.
Yeah.
And Richie, you laugh because you know that everybody wants to peak by Friday.
Oh, yeah. They want it yesterday, right?
Exactly. And what's the winning formula? Well, the winning formula is such a long formula that you're going to have patience to learn the formula. That it all takes time, and everybody wants to be in a rush, whether it be as a coach, being in a rush to get through coaching licenses, right. And they're wanting to get to maybe even the pro license or one of the 2A licenses, senior and youth A license, whatever it may be. Sometimes coaches are in a rush to get through that as opposed to being patient. And then certainly as a coach, be patient with your players and recognize that it takes time to learn this sport to a good degree. And that's going to vary from player to player. But if the coach can understand some patience, then hopefully the coach can get that across to the parents of the kids who also need to be patient with the development of their own child within the sport, and know that it's probably a 20-year journey, at the least a 20-year journey, to really come to full capacity as a soccer player. So I would talk about that, and then I would encourage any beginner coach, novice coach, that yes, I understand that you're hunting for the lesson plans because you're worried about what to do at your next practice, and do that. Find the lesson plans. There's a lot of them available to you on the websites of United Soccer Coaches, of U.S. Soccer, of your state soccer association. Hopefully your club has some lesson plans for you that you can download. Go grab those, absolutely. But also put yourself on the path of both formal and non-formal coach education. Whether you think you're going to last as a coach for a year or 40 years, put yourself on the path of formal and non-formal education as a coach, and just help everybody understand those two terms. Formal education is when you're going to you're signing up for and you're taking a coaching course, whether it be a grassroots course, the A license course, anything in between. You're on that formal pathway. And then non-formal is going to that symposium that your club is putting on, or the state association is putting on, or going to that national convention or the state association's convention, whatever title they might give to it. Those are the non-formal coaching clinics and things that you want to do as a coach.
And alongside all the federations, excellent coaching libraries, I could say, or even, your local, here we go with Colorado, coaching libraries. United States soccer consultants work alongside that, and you can bring it home to them internally within their club, Sam, correct? With the
listening to broadcasts from Sporting Denver, That's another example.
I'm
giving you a pat on the back there, Richie, because you're doing a great job through this medium of reaching coaches, administrators, parents, players themselves. And this is part of that continuing exposure and education for all the stakeholders.
Well, thank you. I've got a sense of humour on occasion, Sam. So I'm just nosy. I want to know what you're doing and how we get it out of there. So that's it.
Yeah.
Sam, I'm going to say thank you for so much for your time. Thank you. That's my hat trick of thank yous. I always do that. Didn't score many in my short career, but I'm doing it every week now. I'm not going to let you go without. I do a quick fire 5 questions, which are pretty much all over the place. And if you can go ahead and answer those for me, that would be fantastic. Hey Sam, in soccer, it can actually be outside of soccer. Is there a specific team that you follow, in the game or outside the game, just for their concept of whatever they may entertain you, or you've got an affinity with them, Sam, a particular team, mate?
It's all fairly emotional for me on that regard, Richie. So in MLS, FC Dallas, I don't want to tick off my other friends and other MLS teams. I have a lot of friends that work with different, but FC Dallas. And then internationally, and I might upset your apple cart, I don't know, but in England, Arsenal, and that just goes back a lot of years to my connection back in the early 80s with Arsenal. But my strongest emotional connection, forget about the level of play, because it's pretty average level of play right now, currently, than it used to be. But the Tampa Bay Rowdies, from way back in the 70s onward, and I was born and raised in Tampa, so there's an emotional connection there.
Classic. And in fact, back in the UK, there was 2 teams that we with the old North American Soccer League and stuff that we associated ourselves with. Obviously the Cosmo, without a doubt. There was always the Rowdies as well, so I was aware of them way back then. So that's your emotional one. I'll run with that, Sam. That is brilliant. I'll forgive you on the Arsenal one, mate. So I'll probably lose some friends now. Hey, staying on that, particular player that male or female that coming through your soccer career, your adventure, any particular players that just wowed you?
Right off the top of my head, Michelle Akers. And I know that probably wasn't a name that you were expecting, because it's a bit of a throwback. I'm always showing my age here, but I had when you can look at Michelle's performance at the international level, and if there had been a more vibrant professional league when she was an active player, a professional league for women, she would have made a big impact and a big mark there too. But at an international level, I would hope that most Americans have some familiarity with the name Michelle Akers as one of our first star international female players. And I had the pleasure of seeing her play in college at the University of Central Florida and participating with her on the state staff in Florida for Florida Youth Soccer Association, working some summer soccer camps with her, and all of this prior to the first Women's World Cup in 1991, and then certainly some afterwards. But when I look at knowing her personality and the strength and courage that she had, also, for those who don't know, to have worked through Epstein-Barr syndrome as an active player, took a lot of determination and courage on her part. And then her personality to give back to the game for all of the years that she continues to give back to the game. And having been a pioneer, not just in the sport, but for women players, female players, as well as coaches and administrators, she's been one of the stars and pioneers in pushing out forward within the United States.
Total agreement with you. For those of the younger generation, Sam, go Google that one as well, because pioneer, keyword, and a superstar, both on and off the field. What's your favourite food, Sam? Here's an easy one.
Prime rib.
I'm all over it. When COVID's gone, travel, I'm down your neck of the woods. I'm all over it, mate.
A good prime rib, a good baked potato, a nice beer, glass of wine, something like that. There you go.
You touched on it earlier. Give me a short sentence on that advice for the coaching parent wanting to get involved in the game. Simplify, outside of patience, advice for them, briefly.
If possible, don't coach your own child. You look at school systems and teachers rarely have their own child in their classroom. If possible, don't coach your own kid. I know that that's the situation
Sure.
in many, many instances in youth soccer across the U.S. But my advice after that is find a mentor within the club, a coaching mentor, a leadership mentor within the club to help guide you as you grow in your experience as a beginner coach.
Last one, Sam. If you could see into the future, I think we all like to see a vision anyway. What would you like to see happen over the next 5, maybe 10 years with the coaching education side of it? What would you like to see evolve?
One of the things is mandatory coaching licensure.
Right.
That may not be popular in the minds of some people who are involved in the sport, but if we want to be serious about doing right by the players and doing things
Sure.
for the players and having a truly player-centered soccer experience in our country, one of those things is having at least an entry-level coaching license, coaching diploma for every single coach in the country. We expect it of our school teachers.
Correct.
I'm going to mention another group, Richie, that you might not be so familiar with, and that's barbers.
Okay.
Barbers have to have a license. You know, it's just a small example, you know, but we have requirements of many different groups. Parents should expect the coach of their kid to have some qualification.
I'm in total agreement with you there, and I think the responsibility falls down onto 2 fronts there. So I'm doing that: 1, the club, and 2, the actual person wanting to get involved. It's a working partnership if you're going to teach inside the game.
Agreed.
Sam, my last hat trick. I get a couple of hat tricks every week. Thank you. Just a brief one on next week's broadcast. We're going to have a guy in from the UK, Nick Inge, who is worldly wise. So for everybody out there, please tune in to that one for us. There we go. With the good-looking guys on the right. So the other guy's a foreigner from London. So there we go. Sam, could you leave all our followers that have tuned in today and listened to excellent words of knowledge, your vision, what you're doing currently, US soccer consultants, please everybody get on board with that. It's going to be invaluable for everyone, both on and off the field. Sam, if you can leave everybody a message, and I'll bid you goodbye, and thank you very much for coming on Sport in Denver, my friend.
Richie, first of all, thank you very much for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure. And to all of the listeners, think about what can you do for the good of the game. And so go out and continue as you're doing. I'm sure to promote the game and grow the game. And I thank everyone for their participation.